In August 1905, 6 of us descended into the depths of Mammoth Cave on behalf of the Smithsonian Institution to map the sinkholes and extract the bones of ancient animals for the museum's collection. 4 of us returned. When rescuers found us in a side gallery on the 3rd day, I couldn't speak for 2 days. My mouth opened, but my voice got stuck somewhere in my chest. Dr. Halloway said it was from cold and exhaustion. I didn't correct him. In November of that year, they found the rest of the bodies in the tunnel where we never returned. The dismemberment was precise. The bones were separated from the joints without a single jagged edge. The entrance was collapsed from the inside. The stones lay as if they had been deliberately stacked. I was 32 when I took this job. Nathaniel Coleman, geologist with the Geological Survey, specializing in karst formations and quaternary deposits. Before Mammoth, I had worked in the mines of Pennsylvania and the sinkholes of New Mexico, descending to depths of up to 200 feet and climbing back up without incident. I knew how to read rock, its layers, cracks, places where water had worn away the limestone over millennia. I didn't believe in miners' superstitions, their stories of tapping in the dark and figures lurking around tunnel corners. I believed in geology. That was my mistake. Our base camp was located in the Rotunda, a large hall 200 feet from the main entrance, where the ceiling rose 30 feet and the acoustics allowed you to hear footsteps 100 yards away. We brought 7 boxes of equipment: hemp ropes and coils of 50 fathoms each, 40 magnesium Bengal candles for photography, carbide lamps with a 14-day supply of carbide, geological hammers, compasses, steel climbing hooks, canvas bags for rock and bone samples, a medical chest with bandages and laudanum. Dr. Griswold's photographic equipment took up 2 boxes: a camera on a tripod, glass plates in felt cases, and chemicals in sealed bottles. We took provisions for 20 days: salted meat in tin cans, dried peas, biscuits in waxed paper, hard Dutch cheese, pork fat, roasted coffee, granulated sugar, and dried apples. We drew water from the underground Echo River, which flowed through the Gothic Gallery. Clean, cold, with a taste of limestone. The team was assembled in Washington 2 months before departure. Dr. Elias Cotterill, an anthropologist from Harvard, was a tall man with narrow shoulders and fingers that constantly drummed on any surface. The table, the tunnel wall, the cover of the leather-bound notebook he never let out of his hands. Dr. William Griswold kept photographic records, a stocky man with a graying beard and an ever-present pipe in his teeth, which went out every half hour in the dampness of the cave. Dr. Robert Finney, a naturalist and physician, was responsible for medical care and describing biological findings. Thin, with a narrow face, and a habit of adjusting his glasses every few minutes. Thomas Shelton worked as a mining engineer, broad-shouldered, silent, with hands scarred from working with dynamite and drills. Samuel Hicks was our guide, a local who had worked as a tour guide in the cave for 7 years, knew the main routes by heart, spoke little, and walked silently. On August 5th, at first light, which barely penetrated the entrance, we moved deeper into Gothic passage. The lamps cast circles of yellow light on the limestone walls covered with calcite drippings. The temperature dropped to 54 degrees within the first 100 feet. The air became humid, and our breath turned to white vapor. Hicks led the way, holding the lamp high. Cottrell followed with a compass, marking the turns. Griswold carried the tripod and the box of plates. I walked forth, recording geological observations. Finney and Shelton brought up the rear with the rest of the load. The first 3 days passed routinely. We went deeper into the Gothic Gallery, measuring the width of the tunnel from 20 to 40 feet and the height of the ceiling from 15 to 30 feet, marking the layers of limestone, the interlayers of shale, and the places where water seeped through and left mineral deposits. Griswold photographed the formations, columns stretching from floor to ceiling, stalactites hanging like stone teeth, stalagmites growing toward them. Every night we returned to the Rotunda, ate salted meat with crackers, drank coffee, and recorded our observations. Hicks talked about the tourists who came in the summer, ladies in long dresses that got dirty on the walls, gentlemen who demanded stops every half hour. Cottrell listened half-heartedly, leafing through a book. Griswold cleaned his camera lenses. Finney checked the medical chest. Shelton was silent, repairing ropes. On August 8th, we reached a fork where the Gothic Gallery diverged into 3 tunnels. Hicks said that the middle one led to the underground Echo River, the left one to a hall called the Star Chamber because of the white calcite crystals on the ceiling, and the right one to unexplored chasms where tourists were not taken. Cottrell insisted on the right one. The Smithsonian Institution wanted new data, not tourist routes. Hicks agreed without enthusiasm. He said that the locals avoided that direction. When Cottrell asked why, Hicks shrugged and replied that superstition was not his business, but the air there felt different. The right tunnel narrowed. After 200 feet, the width dropped to 12 feet, and the ceiling dropped to 10. The walls became wetter. Water dripped more frequently, falling on hats and shoulders and seeping down collars. The sound of footsteps changed. The echo became muffled, as if the stone absorbed it. I noticed it, but didn't think much of it. Acoustics depend on the structure of the rock, the voids behind the walls, the humidity. Nothing unusual. Cottrell drummed his fingers on his notebook faster than usual. By noon on August 9th, we had descended 300 feet below the rotunda through a sloping tunnel that wound like intestine. The lamps barely lit the way. Griswold stumbled twice, cursing under his breath. Finn slips on a wet rock, hitting his shoulder against the wall, but not seriously injured. Shelton walks confidently, but is quieter than usual. Hicks stops at a crack in the floor, narrow, no more than 3 feet wide, running along the left wall. He crouched down and held the lamp to the edge. The light didn't reach the bottom. The air from the crevice was cold, with a smell I didn't recognize at first. Not musty, not moldy. Something else. Organic, but old. Cottrell asked how deep the crevice was. Hicks said he didn't know. Shelton took out a coil of rope, tied a stone to it, and lowered it. The rope went down 40 feet before it tightened. The stone didn't hit anything. Shelton said there might be ledges below. Cottrell decided we would go down there the next day if we could find a way to secure the ropes. I wrote down the coordinates and depth. That night, when we returned to the rotunda, I couldn't get rid of the smell. It lingered in my nostrils, faint but persistent. I asked the others if they smelled anything unusual. Finney said it was congestion from the humidity. Griswold grumbled that all caves stink. Cottrell didn't answer, flipping through his book. Hicks stared into the darkness of the tunnel we had come from. Then he said the smell was familiar. Old blood, he said. Like in a slaughterhouse where the meat has been hanging too long. But not quite. There was a sharp smell of ammonia mixed in. I said it might be bat guano deposits. Hicks shook his head. Bats don't go down that deep. It's too far from the entrance. On August 10th, Shelton and Hicks spent an hour securing ropes at the crevice. They hammered 4 steel hooks into cracks in the rock and checked the tension. Hicks went down first with a lamp. Cottrell followed him. I went down third. The rope cut into my palms through my gloves. The air grew colder, 48 degrees no more. The smell grew stronger. Griswold went down fourth, cursing as the tripod leg caught on the ledges. Finney and Shelton stayed above to belay. At the bottom of the crevice was a tunnel. Low, about 7 feet high, but wide, 25 feet across. The floor was smooth, too smooth for a natural formation. Hicks shone his lamp on the walls. The stone appeared to have been worked, not with tools, but by constant friction. The surface was smooth, polished. Cottrell said that water could create such an effect over thousands of years. I agreed, but water polishes unevenly, leaving waves and pockets. Here, the surface was uniform. We moved forward. 50 feet on, the tunnel widened into a chamber. Not large, about 40 feet in diameter, with a ceiling 12 feet high. In the center of the chamber lay a pile of bones. Griswold set up his tripod and lit a magnesium candle. The flash blinded us for a second. When my vision returned, I could see them clearly. The bones were large, ribs as thick as an arm, femurs 4 feet long, a skull the size of a barrel. A mastodon, said Cottrell, or a megatherium. Finney climbed down and began his examination. He said the bones weren't fossilized, too fresh for the Pleistocene, perhaps a few centuries old, not millennia. The scratches on the surface were deep and parallel. Teeth, he said, or claws. But what caught Cottrell's attention was not the mastodon. In the corner of the hall, between the stalagmites, lay another creature, smaller, about the size of a 10-year-old child. Its skin was gray, covered with a thin layer of calcareous deposits. But it wasn't dead. Its chest rose slowly once a minute. Its head was disproportionately large, with a bony growth above the eyes. Underdeveloped, protruding an inch, but not completely covering the eye sockets. Its arms were long, reaching to its knees, its fingers massive. Its nostrils were wide. Its mouth was slightly open, its teeth flat, like those of a herbivore, but its fangs protruded. It had no ears, only holes on the sides of its head. Cottrell came closer. He reached out and touched the skin. Cold, he said. Ambient temperature. He suggested taking the creature with us. Finney objected. We don't know what it is, what diseases it might carry, how it will react when it wakes up. Cottrell said it was the find of the century, that the Smithsonian Institution would pay for years for such a specimen, that we couldn't pass up this opportunity. Griswold took pictures from different angles, magnesium flashes showering sparks. I recorded the measurements and descriptions. Hicks stood at the entrance to the hall, not approaching. When I asked what he thought, he said that the locals tell stories about blind giants in the underground, about how they hunt by sound, by vibrations, about how if you find a baby, the adults will come. I asked if he believed these stories. He didn't answer. Cottrell made a decision. We would wrap the creature in tarpaulin, lift it upstairs, and transport it to the rotunda. Shelton and Finney came down with a stretcher, 2 poles with canvas stretched between them. We lifted the cub. It weighed 70 pounds, no more. Its skin was damp and slippery. The smell intensified when we touched it. The ammonia stung our eyes. Old blood stuck to its nostrils. We wrapped it up and tied it to the stretcher. It took 20 minutes to pull it up with ropes. The cub did not wake up. By the evening of August 10th, we had set up the stretcher in the rotunda against the far wall. Cottrell ordered a watch to be kept. Everyone on duty for 2 hours, recording any changes. Griswold prepared photographic plates to document the creature if it woke up. Finney measured its body temperature, 53 degrees, pulse, 12 beats per minute, breathing once every 2 minutes. I took the first shift. I sat on a box, held a lamp, and watched. The cub didn't move. Only its chest rose, slowly, almost imperceptibly. It had no eyelids. Its eyes remained open, but its pupils did not react to light. The bony growth above its eyes cast a shadow on its nose. At 2 in the morning, Hicks took over. I went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The smell lingered. I could hear the others breathing, Griswold snoring, Finney coughing, water dripping somewhere in the dark. Then I heard another sound, low, almost inaudible, a vibration. Not constant, pulsing, like breathing, but deeper. I could feel it in my chest, in my bones. It lasted a few seconds, then stopped. Then it repeated. I opened my eyes and looked at Hicks. He sat motionless, holding the lamp, staring into the tunnel. Not at the cub, at the tunnel that led to the crevice. I asked if he could hear it. He nodded. He said the sound was coming from far away, deep. I asked what it could be. He said he didn't know, but the sound was familiar. He had heard it once, 7 years ago, when he was guiding tourists to the Star Chamber. The group heard a vibration from the distant tunnel. The guide who was working at the time, an old miner, told everyone to leave immediately. He didn't explain why. They left. The next day, that tunnel collapsed. Officially, it was a natural cause, but the guide never returned to the cave. I stood up, grabbed the lamp, and walked over to the cub. Its chest was rising at the same rate. Its mouth was slightly open. Its teeth glinted in the light of the lamp. I leaned closer. A smell came from its throat. Rot, ammonia, something else. Swedish. I straightened up and stepped back. The vibration repeated, longer this time. 10 seconds. I could feel it not only in my chest, but also in the bones of my skull, behind my ears. The frequency was low, beyond the limits of audibility, but my body could feel it. Hicks said we should leave. Leave the cave. I asked why. He said they were looking for the cub. On August 11th at first light, as it seeped through the entrance, I woke Cottrell. I told him about the vibrations. He listened, wrote it down in his notebook, and said it could be echolocation from adult specimens if they existed. A phenomenon worthy of study. I suggested returning the cub to its place. Cottrell refused. The specimen was too valuable. If the adults appeared, we would document them. Griswold woke up when he heard the conversation. He said the vibrations could just be seismic activity. Earthquakes are recorded in Kentucky, albeit rarely. Finney checked on the cub. Its condition had not changed. Shelton was silent, sharpening his knife. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the vibration repeated, stronger. The stones beneath their feet shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. It lasted 30 seconds. Griswold grabbed the wall to keep from falling. Cottrell recorded the time, duration, and intensity. Hicks stood at the entrance to the tunnel that led to the crevice. He said the sound was coming from there, closer than at night. Cottrell suggested going down to check. Hicks refused. He said he wouldn't go there again. Cottrell asked why. Hicks said he knew what was there. He had seen the tracks. A long time ago, in a side tunnel he had stumbled into by accident. Tracks a foot wide, 5 toes, claws an inch long, 2 inches deep in the rock. Not an animal, not a human, something in between. He had left that tunnel and never returned. Cottrell said that superstition would not stop scientific research. Shelton agreed to go down with him. I joined them. A geologist had to assess the stability of the tunnel after the vibrations. Griswold took the camera. Finney stayed with the cub. Hicks stayed at the entrance to the rotunda, holding his rifle. We climbed down the ropes. The tunnel at the bottom of the crevice looked different. The floor was wetter. The air was warmer. Not cold like yesterday, but warm, around 60 degrees. The smell was 10 times stronger. The ammonia stung my eyes, old blood stuck in my throat. I breathed through a handkerchief, but it didn't help. The walls of the tunnel glistened, not from water, but from something else. Slime, said Griswold. I touched the wall. Sticky, warm, not snail slime. The consistency was different, thicker. I wiped my hand on my pants, but the smell remained on my fingers. We reached the hall with the bones. The mastodon bones were still there, but the corner where we had found the calf was empty. Of course, but there were marks on the stone. Wide, just as Hicks had described. 5 fingers, claws that had left grooves, but not just marks. I looked closer. Scratches on the walls. Parallel, deep, from the floor to 8 feet high. Shelton measured them. The distance between the scratches was 6 inches. The width of each scratch was half an inch. The depth was 1/4 of an inch. In limestone. I did the math. To leave such grooves, you need strength far exceeding that of a human, or claws made of a material harder than nails. Bone, perhaps, or stone. Griswold photographed the tracks. A magnesium flash illuminated the far end of the hall. There, behind the stalagmites, was a passageway, narrow, about 6 feet wide. We hadn't noticed it yesterday. Cottrell moved closer. The passageway sloped downward at a 30-degree angle. The walls were smooth. The floor was polished to a shine. The smell was coming from there. Cottrell said we should investigate. Shelton objected. We didn't have enough rope to descend into the unknown depths. We didn't have time. We had to get back before dark. Cottrell insisted. I supported Shelton. Griswold said that the lamps had 2 hours of light left. Cottrell gave up. We climbed back up to the rotunda. Finney reported that the cub had not woken up. Hicks reported that the vibration had repeated twice, every 20 minutes, each longer than the previous one. The last one lasted a minute. Dust was falling from the ceiling. The rocks at the entrance to the tunnel had shifted. I examined them. The cracks had widened. Not critically, but noticeably. I warned that a few more vibrations could cause a collapse. Cottrell ignored this. He studied the cub, measuring the proportions of its skull and the length of its limbs, writing down his findings in a notebook. Finney took a skin sample, a small one, from the shoulder. The blood was dark, almost black. Griswold developed the photographic plates and chemicals, complaining about the lack of light. Shelton checked the equipment and reinforced the ropes. Hicks sat at the entrance, keeping his eyes on the tunnel. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the vibration came again. Stronger. The floor shook. The lamps swayed on their hooks. The crack in the ceiling widened, and stones fell. One fell next to Finney, missing him by an inch. Finney jumped back and stumbled. The vibration lasted 2 minutes. The frequency changed. Not one note, but several, pulsing in waves. The sound could be felt in my skull, behind my eyes. I covered my ears with my palms, but it didn't help. The sound came from inside, through the bones. When the vibration stopped, my ears were ringing. The cub twitched. Its first movement in 2 days. Its head turned toward the tunnel. Its mouth opened wider. A sound came from its throat. A squeak, high-pitched, short. Then silence. Hicks stood up. He said we were leaving. Now. Cottrell said we couldn't leave the cub. Hicks said the cub was bait. The adults knew where it was. They were coming. Cottrell asked how he knew. Hicks said the vibrations weren't echolocation. They were a call, a response. The cub had called, and the adults had answered. Now they were coming to get it, and us. Cottrell refused to leave. He said that if the adults came, we would document them, that this was an unprecedented event, that science required risk-taking. Griswold agreed. The camera was ready, the magnesium flares were loaded. Finney hesitated, but stayed. Shelton said that if we stayed, he would strengthen our defenses. Rifles, knives, axes. Hicks shook his head. He said weapons wouldn't help. He had seen what they did with bones. But he stayed, not out of scientific interest, out of a sense of duty as a guide. We carried our equipment to the entrance of the tunnel that led to the crevice. A barricade of boxes, 2 rifles. Hicks and Shelton had them. The others had axes. Lamps were placed around the perimeter. Cutterill settled down with a notebook, ready to take notes. Griswold set up a camera on a tripod and pointed it into the tunnel. Finney checked the medical chest. Bandages, laudanum, needles, and thread. I held a geological hammer, feeling the absurdity of the situation. A hammer against something that leaves grooves in limestone. The vibration came at 4 o'clock. It lasted 3 minutes. The floor shook continuously. Cracks spread across the ceiling like a spider web. Rocks fell constantly. One hit Griswold on the shoulder, and he cried out but held on to the camera. The sound changed. No longer waves, but a continuous rumble, low, felt in the stomach. The cub twitched on the stretcher. His arms and legs jerked. His head jerked from side to side. His mouth opened. His squeak grew louder, turning into a shriek. High-pitched, piercing. Finney approached, trying to calm it down. The cub jerked, its hand striking Finney in the chest. Finney flew 3 feet back, falling on his back. The blow was strong. I saw the imprint of its fingers on his shirt. Bruises were forming before my eyes. When the vibration stopped, the tunnel was silent. Not the usual silence of a cave. Absolute silence. The dripping of water stopped. The echo disappeared. The air froze. I could only hear the breathing of the others. My own heartbeat. Hicks raised his rifle and aimed into the darkness of the tunnel. Shelton followed his example. Cotterill took notes, his hands shaking. Griswold took a magnesium candle and prepared to light it. Finney stood up, clutching his chest. I gripped my hammer. A smell came from the tunnel. It was 100 times stronger than usual. The ammonia was so strong it made me want to vomit. Old blood flowed into my throat. The Swedish admixture made me feel nauseous. I covered my nose with a handkerchief, but it was impossible to breathe. My eyes watered. Griswold coughed. Finney bent over and vomited on the rocks. Cutterill covered his mouth with his sleeve and continued writing. Hicks breathed through his teeth, his rifle raised. Then a sound, not a vibration. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, not an echo. A direct sound, muffled, absorbed by the rock but audible. Once every 5 seconds. One step. A pause. Another step. The distance was closing. I counted. 20 steps. 100 feet to the crevice. 15 steps. 75 feet. 10 steps. 50 feet? Hicks whispered for everyone to stay still. The sound would stop if it heard movement. We froze. The footsteps stopped. Silence. 1 minute. 2. The cub stopped moving, only its chest rising. The squeaking stopped. I waited, not breathing. Sweat ran down my back, cold. My hands gripped the hammer until it hurt. Hicks didn't blink, staring into the tunnel. Shelton took aim, finger on the trigger. Cutterill recorded the time. Griswold held a magnesium flare, ready to light it. Then the air changed. Not the temperature, the pressure. My ears popped. It hurt to swallow. I felt my chest tighten, my breathing become difficult. The others felt the same. Finney grabbed his throat, gasping for air. Griswold coughed continuously. Cotterill dropped his pen and clutched his chest. Hicks whispered that it was echolocation. Low frequency, below audibility, affecting the organs. I asked how to stop it. He said there was no way. Wait until it stops. The pressure intensified. I fell to my knees. The hammer fell from my hands. My heart was beating irregularly, skipping beats. Finney collapsed on his side, his hands pressed to his ears. Blood flowed from his nose. Griswold dropped his camera, the tripod leg breaking with a crack. Cutterill slid down the box, the book falling. Hicks and Shelton remained on their feet, but their rifles shook. The cub squealed again, piercingly. The pressure stopped. I inhaled, the air cutting into my lungs. A cough shook my chest. Blood spurted onto my palm. I wiped my mouth. The others rose slowly. A hand emerged from the tunnel. I saw it first. Long, 5 feet from elbow to fingertips. Massive, forearm as thick as a man's torso. Skin gray, covered with growths like tree bark. 5 fingers. Long, 1.5 feet each. Claws curved, an inch thick, black. The hand dropped onto the edge of the crevice. The fingers clenched the stone. The limestone cracked under the pressure. The hand pulled up the body. I saw the shoulder, wide 4 feet. The head, a bony growth above the eyes completely covered them, leaving a single slit, like the eye socket of a cyclops, the size of a barrel. Nostrils at the end of the snout, open, drawing in air. Mouth below the snout, wide, teeth flat, but fangs protruding an inch. The rest remained in the darkness of the tunnel. Height, 8 feet, maybe 9. Shoulder width, 6 feet. Griswold lit a magnesium flare. The flash illuminated the creature completely for a second. I saw its torso, massive, humped. Its arms were long, reaching to the ground. Its legs were short, bent like a gorilla's. Its skin was covered with scars, growths, old wounds. A piece of flesh was missing from its right shoulder, white bone protruding. The flash went out. The creature did not move. Its head turned toward the cub. Its nostrils flared. A sound came from its throat, low, vibrating. Not a growl, not a roar, something between a breath and a moan. Hicks fired. The rifle boomed, the echo hitting the walls. The bullet hit the shoulder where the flesh was missing, passing through the bone. The creature jerked, its head snapping back. Its hand struck the edge of the crevice. The stone shattered into fragments. One hit me in the forehead. Blood ran into my eyes. Hicks reloaded and fired again. The bullet hit the chest. The skin bulged but did not break. The creature took a step forward. The floor shook. Shelton fired. The bullet hit the head and ricocheted off the bone growth. The creature grabbed the edge of the crevice with both hands and pulled itself up completely. Height, 9 feet. Weight? I estimated from the way the stone cracked underfoot. 800 pounds, maybe 1,000. It stepped toward the cub, ignoring us. Cutterill shouted to shoot at its legs. Hicks and Shelton fired. The bullets hit its thighs, shins. Blood flowed, black and thick. The creature didn't stop. It reached the stretcher, bent down, grabbed the cub. Its arms wrapped around it and lifted it up. The cub squealed, but fell silent when the adult pressed it to its chest. The adult's head turned toward us. Its nostrils flared. The smell intensified. Nausea rose. Its mouth opened slightly. A sound came from its throat. Not a vibration, but a roar. Short, deafening. The echo hit us so hard that our ears popped. The creature turned and stepped toward the tunnel. Cutterill shouted for someone to stop it. Shelton lunged forward with his axe. He struck it in the back, the axe sinking 3 inches and getting stuck. The creature turned, and its hand swept Shelton away. He flew 10 feet, hitting his head against the wall. His skull cracked with a crunch. He fell and didn't move anymore. Blood spread in a pool beneath his head. The creature stepped into the tunnel and disappeared into the darkness. The footsteps receded. Silence returned. I could hear the others breathing, my own heartbeat. Finney crawled over to Shelton and checked his pulse. He shook his head. Griswold sat with his hands pressed to his face. Cotterill picked up the notebook and began to write with a trembling hand. Hicks reloaded his rifle and stared into the tunnel. I said we had to leave. Now. Cotterill objected. We had to follow, document. I said Shelton was dead, that any of us could be next. Finney agreed. Griswold agreed. Hicks said there was only one way out, through the main entrance, but the tunnel to it would pass by the crevice. There was no alternative. I asked if there were other exits. Hicks said that the side galleries led to Echo River, and from there was a crevice that led to the surface 3 miles away. It was narrow and difficult to pass through, but possible. We gathered our equipment, lamps, ropes, water, some provisions. We left the boxes, the camera, and the medical chest. We left Shelton's body. There was no time to bury him. Cottrell took the book and the samples. Griswold took several photographic plates. Finney took bandages and laudanum. Hicks took a rifle and a knife. I took a hammer and a compass. We moved along the side gallery. It was narrow, about 8 feet wide, with a ceiling 7 feet high. The walls were damp, the floor slippery. Hicks went first with the lamp. I followed with the compass. Cotterill, Finney, and Griswold followed. We walked quickly without stopping. There were sounds behind us. Not footsteps. A grinding noise. Stone upon stone. Hicks said the tunnel was collapsing. I turned around and shone my lamp back. The ceiling was cracking. Stones were falling. Dust rose in clouds. The collapse began 50 feet behind us and was getting closer. I shouted for everyone to run. We ran. The lamp swayed, the light dancing on the walls. Griswold stumbled and fell. I grabbed him by the arm and dragged him forward. The ceiling collapsed behind us. The rumble of the collapse driving us on. A fork appeared ahead. Hicks turned right into an even narrower tunnel. We squeezed through, our shoulders scraping the walls. Cotterill dropped his book, stopped, and I pushed him forward. The book was left behind. Behind us, the tunnel collapsed with a crash. Dust covered us like a wave, and the lamps went out. It was pitch black. I lit the lamp again. My hands were shaking. The match broke. The second one lit. The wick caught. The light returned. We were standing in a narrow crevice, 3 feet wide and 20 feet long. Further on, it widened. Hicks said it was part of the way to Echo River. Another mile. We moved on. The tunnel widened to 20 feet. The ceiling rose to 15. The air became damp and cold. I heard water, a distant but distinct murmur. The river was close. We picked up speed. Finney coughed continuously, dust clogging his lungs. Griswold limped, his leg twisted in a fall. Cutterill walked silently, his hands shaking more without the book. Hicks led confidently, knowing the way. Half an hour later, we reached the river. Echo, an underground river 30 feet wide, depth unknown. The water was black, cold, and slow-moving. Hicks said the opening to the surface was 1/4 mile upstream. We had to walk along the bank. The bank was narrow, 5 feet wide, slippery. We walked one by one, holding onto the wall. The water splashed at our feet. I heard a sound. Not water, breathing. Heavy, distant. From the tunnel we had come from. I turned around and shone my lamp. Darkness. But the breathing was getting closer. Hicks said we had to hurry. We ran as fast as the shore would allow. Griswold fell behind, his limp slowing him down. Finney helped him. Cutterill overtook everyone, running ahead of Hicks. I heard breathing behind me, closer. Not one. Several. Low, synchronous. The vibration started again. Weak but constant. The water in the river rippled. The stones under my feet trembled. A crack appeared ahead. A narrow fissure in the ceiling, 2 feet wide, going upward. Light seeped in from above, faint, gray. Twilight on the surface. Hicks said to climb one at a time. No ropes needed, the walls were close. You could brace yourself with your back and feet. Cottrell went first. He squeezed through the crack and disappeared upward. Finney helped Griswold. Griswold climbed slowly, with difficulty, but he climbed. Finney followed. I looked back into the tunnel. They emerged from the darkness. 2 of them, massive, gray, with bony growths above their eyes. One was holding a cub. The other was walking ahead. Their long arms touched the ground. Their heads were turned toward us. Their nostrils flared. They walked slowly, unhurriedly. They knew we were trapped. Hicks raised his rifle and fired. The bullet hit the creature in front, in the chest. Blood spurted. It didn't stop. Hicks fired again. He hit its leg. The creature stumbled but kept going. Hicks told me to climb. I climbed. My hands slid over the rock. My back pressed against the opposite wall. I climbed, hearing shots below. 1, 2, 3. Hicks's scream. Short, abrupt, a crunch, silence. I climbed faster. My muscles burned. The crack narrowed, then widened. I squeezed through, my skin rubbing against the stone. The exit appeared above. Finney's hands grabbed me and pulled me out. I fell to the ground, onto the grass, wet with dew. The air was fresh and cold. The sky was dark, stars were visible. I took a breath and coughed. Cutterill sat by a tree, his head in his hands. Griswold lay on his back, breathing heavily. Finney stood at the edge of the crevice, looking down. No one came out of the crevice. I crawled to the edge and looked down. Darkness. No sounds. I called Hicks. The echo came back. Silence. Finney said we had to leave. Cotterill didn't move. Griswold got up with difficulty. I got up, took Cotterill by the arm, and lifted him up. We walked through the forest. By dawn on August 11th, we reached the road. A local farmer's truck took us to Brownsville. From there, we sent a telegram to the Smithsonian Institution. The rescue team arrived the next day. We returned to the cave. The main entrance had collapsed. The rocks were piled so high that it would have taken weeks to clear them. I said that the collapse had occurred naturally after the vibrations. No one objected. The side entrances were checked. The crevice through which we had exited was blocked from the inside. The rocks were fresh and tightly packed. I did not say exactly how they were packed. Deliberately. The bodies of Shelton and Hicks were found 3 months later when part of the collapse was cleared. In a side gallery, 100 feet from the rotunda. The dismemberment was precise. The limbs were separated from the torsos at the joints. The bones were clean, without nicks. The heads were missing. Their clothes were neatly folded nearby. The tools were arranged by type. Knives separately, ropes separately. I couldn't explain it. I didn't want to. The Institute closed the case. The official version was a collapse caused by seismic activity, 2 fatalities. The expedition was deemed a failure. No samples were found. Griswold's photographic plates were damaged during the evacuation. Cotterill's notebook remained in the tunnel. My report is based on memory. Finney returned to Boston and gave up caving. Griswold moved to California and stopped taking photographs. Cotterill gave up teaching and now works as a librarian in Providence. My fingers stopped drumming. I continued working as a geologist. I went down into mines, sinkholes, and caves, but not in Kentucky. Mammoth Cave was closed to exploration for 2 years after the incident. When it reopened, I didn't apply. My colleagues asked why. I said I had studied the formation enough. That was true, partially. Sometimes at night I hear a vibration. Low, almost inaudible. I feel it in the bones of my skull behind my ears. It lasts for seconds, then stops. Doctors say it's the after effects of concussion, that the pressure in my ears is disturbed. I don't correct them, but I know it's not concussion. I know that somewhere deep in the tunnels, where humans should not explore, they are still there. The blind giants of the underground, the cyclops of the limestone caves, and the cub we took has returned to them. The entrance to the deep galleries has been collapsed. From the inside, deliberately, they have closed their world from ours, and rightly so. Some places should remain inaccessible. Some things should not be explored. It is a lesson I learned too late. A lesson that cost 2 lives. I am writing this in March 1906 in my office in Washington. Outside the window, rain is falling, tapping evenly and monotonously on the glass. The sound is soothing. It is not like a vibration. It is safe, human. But sometimes, when the rain subsides and silence falls, I hear another sound. Distant, deep, coming from somewhere underground. And I know that they remember. They remember us. They remember that we took their child. And if anyone ever goes down into those tunnels again, finds what should remain hidden, they will come. Silently, despite their size, smelling of old blood and ammonia, with their massive hands and bone claws. And then there will be no escape, only darkness, and vibration, and silence after.